Welcome to Sunrise Life, the podcast where we have deep conversations with freelance models. Today, I have Marie Brooks on the line. Say hello.
Hello, everyone.
I'm so glad that you were able to do this episode on short notice. This is so great.
It worked out perfectly.
Yeah, you are in Mexico right now.
Yes, I am. I'm in Merida, Mexico.
That's so cool. I can't wait to be back in Mexico someday.
You guys are coming back to do another cenote tour, right?
The next one that's happening in the beginning of March, I'm actually not going to be on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to, but when we were planning it, because like the time that it was happening and then the progression of my mom's health, I wasn't sure if it might
That
land
makes
on the
sense.
time that I needed to be there for my mom. So I just said, I'm going to skip it this season, and Astrid found another underwater model to step in for me.
Perfect.
Yeah, but now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, dang, I'd rather be there. I'm going to be in Denver instead.
Not quite as warm.
Not quite as warm, but it is reliable income. And so,
Perfect.
So for our listeners, I wanted to just state that of all the traveling models that I know, you are one that travels to the most different countries the most frequently. And I've been watching you on Instagram and like catching you randomly as you come by through the Southwest. And you just seem like you're everywhere all the time, like shooting so much. How do you do it?
I actually don't really shoot as much as it may look on my Instagram. I post a lot of photos to try to stay semi-relevant through the stories, but I do try to travel to as many different places as possible, a lot of it for scouting, and I try to get work along the way to pay for my travel expenses. And being fully nomadic, it's a little bit easier because I'm not paying rent back at home. I just pay my rent at hostels and Airbnbs along the road, so I can pretty much be wherever I want to be.
That is so super hardcore. Like I thought that van lifing was hardcore, but you were just like no dwelling. You are like from rental location to rental location. That's so crazy.
Yeah, it gets a bit stressful sometimes and kind of exhausting, but I took all of December into one spot, and that was really nice.
That does sound nice. So how long are you in a spot at any given time usually?
It depends on the location and the cost of the short-term rentals and the amount of work I'm able to get in those locations. So if I'm not able to get a lot of work and the short-term rentals are expensive, I can only stay like 5 days to a week. But if the rentals are more affordable and I'm able to get enough work to sustain that, then I can stay for a little bit longer.
That makes sense. It does make a lot of sense. I kind of compare it to the cost of RV parks for me when I'm traveling. If it's like an $80 a night like RV park, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be here for very long. But sometimes there's a monthly discount.
Yeah, exactly. So here for December, I was able to rent out a room at 400 for the month USD, and it's like I could definitely do that. I can rent a room and afford to be in there for a whole month. But if
Wow.
I was in the US, that would be like probably 1500 minimum.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 400 is really good. Is that a hostel?
It's just a private room in someone's house that they were renting out on Airbnb, and they offered a discount for me to stay for the whole month.
Wow, that's so cool. Have you ever used couch surfers?
I used to use that, but I had a couple creepy situations using Couchsurfer,
Yeah.
so I don't really use it as often anymore. I found a lot of people on there were using it for trying to find dates.
What the fuck? Oh my God. Yeah, that sucks. Yeah, the life of a nomad. And see, a lot of models that I know that do like their primary source of income as being photo shoots that are running around doing a bunch of bookings. Most that I know, they drive a car around and then, get hosted by photographers or stay at Airbnbs, but then they always have an address that their tour ends at, like a place of dwelling where, they have all their stuff and like their cat or whatever. but you don't have that like nesting place.
No, so I have to have an address for tax purposes. So I use
Yeah.
my friend's address in Canada for my mail and kind of legal reasons to be able to still be a person. And I have random storage lockers in different places that I store little bits of things.
Whoa, that's crazy. Wow. Well, I'm sure the people listening are very fascinated by that because I mean, I even find it fascinating and I travel a bunch too. That's cool. Different storage lockers in different parts of the world. Wow, cool.
So
So
my stuff is scattered all over.
do you prefer to like have a rental or do you also get hosted by other models or photographers?
I do hosting sometimes, and I do really appreciate the offers for hosting and the ability to be hosted. But because I'm on the road all the time, it is kind of nice to be able to stay in a hostel bed with like a curtain on it that I can just come home after shooting, close the curtain, and not have to talk to anyone
Yeah.
because
I,
it gets exhausting.
yeah, I get that. I totally get that. As an introvert, do you think that you might be partly introverted?
Definitely. I would say I'm definitely more introverted, but I have to have like an extroverted side to be able to kind of be relevant and I guess communicative in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very relatable. Very relatable. People think that we're all like people think that all the traveling nude models are not only extroverted but maybe also exhibitionists at the same time when it's honestly
Hmm.
like, yeah, totally not the case in most cases.
No, no. But I like people and I love meeting people and hanging out with people, but I definitely need my own space and time to like recover from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it ever feel lonely living on the road like that?
Definitely. It definitely does. It's nice I've been able to make a lot of modeling friends so I can meet up with you guys on the road or for coffee or dinner or for a shoot along the way. So that's always nice. And I've met some good photographer friends that I can they'll sometimes host me or we'll go for dinner. So that gives some interactions, but like having that like best friend that you could be like, "Hey, I'm having a bad day. Come on over and let's like hang out." It gets lonely not having that.
That sucks. Yeah, but I mean that's one of the sacrifices of being a full-time traveling person, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
for our listeners, can you describe how you first got into modeling?
So I first got into modeling. One of my friends used to teach at an art school, and she had a model cancel for one of her drawing classes. So she knew I was off that day and asked if I would come in and model for the class. And I didn't really ask any questions. I was just like, yeah, sure. I'll come on in and do that. And I had really no idea what I was getting into. I thought I was just gonna sit in the classroom and they were gonna draw like a portrait of my face or something. And I showed up and she handed me a robe and it's like, what's this for? And I'm like, I think my clothes look nicer than this. Why would they want to draw a robe? She's like, they're not actually drawing a robe. You are not going to be wearing the robe. This is just to get from the dressing room to the classroom. What do you mean? Like, you're gonna be posing nude. Oh, well, you didn't tell me that. I guess I'm here, so I guess I'll have to do that.
Oh my god.
I definitely wasn't expecting that, but I started posing at the art schools, and then her coworkers started hiring me, and then other schools started requesting, and then photographers started asking me to sit for them for portraits, and then I started doing like bookings for myself. And yeah, it kind of just evolved from that.
Wow. Yeah. So it started with the sketch classes and then evolved into photography and then just sort of snowballed, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, I
That's
found
really
out that I
cool.
really enjoyed it. And I used to be a dancer and I was injured, so I wasn't able to dance anymore. So doing the posing, I was like, oh, yes, I can be creative with my body again, and I really love this, and people are asking to book me, so like this is maybe something I can do.
Wow. If do you mind me asking what happened with your injury with dancing?
I had two knee surgeries, just tore out both of my knees at different times, and they don't really heal back the way like I can't do snowboarding or anything that's too hard on my knees.
Oh my god, that sucks.
Yeah, it also it affected my flexibility a lot, which was really frustrating.
Wow. Yeah. What about hiking? Is hiking hard with your knees?
I can do hikes for like a little bit of time, and as long as it's not too much straight downhill, because that's a lot of pressure on the knees. But if
Yeah.
I'm doing a little bit, like maybe 2 hours is fine, or if I'm doing a little like half hour up and then sit and have some water and a break and take some pictures and then hike again for another like half hour, then that's fine. But if I'm doing like an all day thing, my knees will definitely be sore that evening and the next day.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like it's manageable, just like no snowboarding for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I take collagen and fish oils to try to help with the joints, and I find that helps a lot. So it's just kind of being aware of what my body can do and trying to manage what I put it through too much.
Right on. I mean, isn't that what we do with everything, especially as we're
Exactly.
aging, like vitamins, glucosamine. Like.
Yeah, totally.
So, how long have you been a full-time traveling model now?
So I've been fully nomadic since 2016. So that's 8 years now.
Wow.
And I was traveling model for 2 years before that. And then I kind of just did like local stuff around where I was living and within like 2 hours of where I was living before that on weekends or days off.
Wow. Yeah. So you've been doing this for quite some time then. Do you want to continue like in the same like way that you're traveling for a while?
I I really love my lifestyle. I would like to be able to have a little bit more stability because the industry is not really that stable. Like when you have a 9 to 5 job, you know that you're going to work X amount of hours every week, and at the end of the month, your paycheck is going to be X amount of dollars, and you can budget out everything a lot easier. But working this way, you like never know when you're going to have work and when you're not going to have work, and it's a lot more stressful and not knowing where I'm going to sleep every night or having to throw down the stepping stones as you're walking gets kind of stressful.
Yeah.
But I like the freedom to kind of come and go places as I want to. And I would like to be able to do this as long as possible. I'll probably start spending a couple months of the year trying to do a different job and then just travel for part of the year. I think the industry is getting more difficult for different reasons. It's going to be harder to be able to maintain appropriate income doing this full time for much longer.
You're saying that factors that are within the industry are making it harder. Could you elaborate on that? I'm curious too.
I think AI is going to start taking business away from models. I think people will still want to hire models for like personal interactions and having a person to talk to. But I think a lot of the newer generation might start using AI a bit more. I do know a couple photographers that I used to work with that now use only AI models and they don't use higher models anymore. I think as the older generation dies off, hiring models might not be a hobby so much anymore as it is now. I just think there's a lot of things changing in the industry for not immediate future, but probably like 5 to 10 years down the road.
Dang, that's freaking me out. Like I know that people have said that AI might like take over like the modeling and photography industry. And I mean, I could see how like I've played with AI. I'm like, I know how you put in a prompt and then it spits out an image, or you can upload a photo and then it can like modify the photo. But People are just generating images without having a photo shoot at all, I suppose.
Yeah, a lot of people are.
Yeah, but, there's definitely a lot of the in-person experience of doing a photo shoot that I suppose not everybody wants to do all of that, but, like, going especially, like, to a location that requires you to travel to some place to go there and then do a photo shoot, like, you do a lot of destination type events where you organized trips where there's like multiple photographers and models. And I know this because I was on one, and I couldn't imagine that experience being replaced with a. So perhaps putting on experience type photo shoots is the antidote to like worrying about losing work through people just creating AI images instead. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think people are going to start hiring models more as like a fully like experience to like experience a location and create art with someone in person and like collaborate on ideas rather than I think just the short little 2-hour bookings aren't going to be as popular anymore and there will be less people doing them.
Yeah, I suppose. Like if you had a clothing design and you needed to just like do catalog style images, I'm sure there's a way where you can just like upload photos of your clothes on a mannequin and then just AI that mannequin into a human, right? I'm
Yeah.
just thinking of
Well,
ways that
there's
it could take a person's spot.
yeah, definitely. Some of the photographers that I know that are mainly using AI now too, or even AIing destinations, like a nude model in the middle of the desert with a camel in the background. Like whatever.
Right. Like, okay, this reminds me of a time years ago that I posted something on Instagram saying that one of my bucket list concepts is to do an artistic nude photo shoot in a cave with stalactites and stalagmites. And somebody messaged me and they were like, "Oh, just give me a photo of yourself and I could Photoshop you to be anywhere." And I was like, "Okay, but you can Photoshop me to be in outer space. It doesn't mean that I was actually in outer space. Like I want to be there, you know, it's
Yes.
part of it." So I guess if somebody, I suppose you could create anything with AI, but
Yeah.
like, would you rather do that than go and actually do it in person? I suppose is the real answer.
I think it depends on the person. I think with the older generations, I think the yeah, I want to go to that location and it's not really what I'm looking for if I don't actually get to experience that location in person. But I think maybe the new generations coming up might not need to have not feel like they need to go to the exact location and experience it if they can experience it virtually.
That's tough. Oh man, because being at a place in person, like even when I'm sharing photos, like out in nature, like I feel so bad that the photo is just going to be enjoyed on a cell phone screen. Because I'm like, okay, you can look at this photo and yeah, it's pretty, but being there in person is like 1,000 times better. Like, how do
I
you?
absolutely agree with that. One of my friend's brothers, though, he's a computer programmer and he spends a lot of time with technology. And he would prefer to just go into the virtual universe and visit a place that way than he says like, oh, but then I'd have to pay for a flight and I had to pay for a hotel and then I'd have to go to this place I don't speak the language and what if I don't like the food and then I have jet lag and it's like I'd much rather just do it virtually because it's pretty
Oh
much
my
the same
god,
thing.
it's not.
It's not at all, no. I don't
That
think so.
I feel bad for people like that though. If gosh, like I hadn't really put that much thought into this, obviously, and now that you're really painting the picture for me, it is very sad that
Mhm.
a lot of people, because they don't speak the language or they're not sure if they're gonna like the food. Gosh, that's man. But you're just gonna keep on keeping on, maybe get a part-time job somewhere, and then continue.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's cool what you're doing.
I
So
love it for sure, but it would be nice to have at least a couple months because like dating is also very difficult in the lifestyle I have. I'm only in a place a week and then I go again. So if I meet someone, it's like, hey, well, see you maybe in like 6 months.
uh,
So being somewhere for maybe 3 months and then settling down for those 3 months every year might offer a little bit more opportunity to meet someone, or if if not, then it at least gives me time to develop some kind of community with people that I can join
Yeah.
dance classes and get into a regular yoga routine and just kind of show up to the community and have like a little community for a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was gonna thinking of asking you about relationships, but I didn't want to bring it up. But since you brought it up, have you had like a relationship at all since you've been doing this full-time traveling since 2016?
I've had little short ones, but it's always ended up being that I'm not available to spend enough time with them, or they're not able to come and see me as much as they would like to because of their work situation isn't as flexible as mine is. And they've always decided that they would rather it be with someone that they can kind of settle down with, or the people that I meet are not able to settle down either. So our paths are taking us all over the place and we never end up seeing each other enough to actually develop a
Yeah,
relationship.
that makes sense though. That
Yep.
makes the lifestyle is not for everybody. Like unless you can find somebody that wants to be your full-time assistant and travel with you, which is still like I mean your lifestyle, you pretty much need like an entire person's income of what you're doing for just one person to travel.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it would
So if
make it
I
harder.
end up bumping into another nomad that we click on the same kind of values and vibes, then maybe. But we're
Yeah.
just all out there in the world going different directions.
Yeah. That makes sense. So I have a question that I wanted to ask that I ask everybody on the show. I call it the photo shoot fail of the week. Can you describe an experience where you had a photo shoot that was crazy for whatever reason? Could be crazy funny, it could be crazy bad. What's your photo shoot fail story?
So I was hired to go to this really, really beautiful waterfall river area, and we had booked to do a whole day. We wanted to catch waterfall and some along the river, and then some in the forest, and then we were going to go back and do a couple hours in studio. So we did the whole day out, did the waterfall, did the river, did the forest area, and when we got back to the house to do the photo shoot in studio, he realized that he left the card with all the photos on it in the forest.
Oh my
He had
god.
switched his cards out just before we had left, and he had left the card out in the forest. So instead of shooting in the studio, we drove all the way back out, the hour out, back out to the forest to try to find the card. We spent all evening looking for this card and wasn't anywhere. We never ended up finding it. So he was obviously very devastated because we had spent all day shooting and everything was gone.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So
What?
he ended up dropping me off, and I felt really bad about the whole thing because booked me for a whole day and we got nothing. So that was really awkward because it's like, what do you do in that situation where
Yeah.
like it wasn't really my fault at all, but it's also very devastating. So yeah, he
Wow.
was very upset. So he on the way back he was also like driving very erratic, and it was kind of scary. I was like,
Oh
okay,
my
just calm
god.
down. Maybe you should not be driving right now. But yeah, I think that was probably the most like awkward and like it was horrible. I felt so bad for him that all of the images were gone, and we had looked for that card for so long and missed out on shooting anything else. So I was able to, during the time I was there, I was able to give him another 2 hours for free, but that also doesn't really make up for the whole day of shooting.
Yeah. I mean, that was nice of you to do, but oh man. So he like switched his cards out while you guys were in the forest and it must have fallen somewhere or something.
Yeah, he had his bag open while he was like putting his camera gear away, and I guess he switched his card out and put it maybe on the top of his camera bag while he was putting the new one in to drive back while I'm changing up behind a tree. So it must have just like fallen off his bag when he closed it, or he forgot to put it back in his bag or something.
Oh my god, that sounds like every photographer's nightmare.
Yes. It was so horrible.
Next to showing up after driving 4 hours and then you forgot your camera battery or something like that.
Yes, that has also happened.
Oh man, but I mean, I feel like even that's not as bad as actually doing the entire shoot and then losing the card. Like that's pretty bad.
Yes, yeah, spent all day going to these like beautiful locations that he had been wanting to shoot at for so long and just
Oh man.
yep, so sad.
Uh-huh. And I mean, expensive too, because he probably hired you for that whole time
Yes.
also.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Oh my God. Whoever that is, if you're listening, I'm sorry. That sucks.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it doesn't get much worse than that. But damn. So, and it's too bad that he was driving erratically. That would have irritated me also. I would have wanted to be
Yeah.
driving instead also.
Yeah, I understand you being upset, but there's also like there's someone else in your car, so maybe let's be safe.
Yeah, now we're both gonna hit a tree and die because
Mhm.
yeah, man. Where part of the world was that?
This was just outside of San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Damn.
Yeah.
Wow. And you also said that you had an experience where somebody forgot their battery.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot. I've had that happen a few times. I have a Sony camera, so
Yeah.
one of the times that I remember I was able to give them the battery for my camera and we were still able to do the shoot. But yeah, some driving to location and realizing you don't have your battery for your camera sucks.
Yeah. Damn. I mean, there's all the technical things that like if you're not on top of it, then the whole shoot could just be gone because of a technicality.
Yes, for shit.
Yeah. I've definitely accidentally formatted a card because I told myself, "Oh, I saved all this stuff, right? Yeah, I saved all this stuff," and then formatted it, and then 5 minutes later realized that I did not save all of that stuff.
No, I have done that. I actually just did that a couple months ago and I was so pissed off.
Yeah, and then it's like you
Yes.
want to take your SD card to like you supposedly can like run recovery software, but I've never successfully been able to do that.
I am waiting to get back to the US to be able to do that. I have not touched the card. It's sitting right now in an envelope because I want to see if someone else can recover it for me.
Okay, that's a lie. There was one time that something happened to a card and I still was able to recover it. It wasn't a formatting though. It was I did a shoot like after the whole entire shoot involved hiking this massive mountain crossing in New Zealand. And at the end of the shoot, I took the card out and like was putting it in the computer for the photographer. And the computer for the photographer was a PC. And previously, I'd only attached that SD card to a Mac. And then, like, it just said disk error when I plugged it into the PC. And I was like, disk error?
Uh,
What do you mean disk error? Like, this hike was literally like a 14-hour all day hike.
oh my gosh.
But it was the images were able to be recovered. And so that was great. But if they weren't, I would have been really upset.
Yeah, that happened to me in Thailand. The photographer we went out on a boat he hired the boat to go out to do underwater shooting and we had a diver with us so that
Oh my,
give me air and I could pose and then come back with the air and I could pose and we
that's
spent two
hardcore.
hours shooting and it was like an hour out on the boat one way, an hour on the way back, and he puts the card in and there's a card error. I actually don't know if he ever got photos because I've
Oh
never
my
seen
god.
any from the shoot and I haven't heard from him for a long time, so I don't know if he ever ended up recovering any.
Wow, what an excursion. And that type of underwater modeling where a diver is feeding you air, like I've tried that before and like I'm an experienced underwater model. I am
Yeah,
not into that.
yeah, I don't have fantastic breath hold, so I admire like you and the other ladies that do the free dive modeling. And I've tried it, but my breath hold is horrible. I'm very comfortable underwater and have no issues with water going up in my sinuses, but the breath hold just is not satisfying enough for me to that I'm like, oh, I'm not down there long enough to get what I want. So I prefer having the diver there because I feel more comfortable
Yeah.
having that access to air.
Yeah. I feel though, like I haven't, I mean, I've scuba dived like once or twice. I feel though when I'm sitting down there underwater quite a ways, that the air that I'm breathing off of the regulator is not as satisfying as just like getting to the surface and breathing like a good breath of air.
No, I it's not. I'm a scuba diver and it's not as satisfying. It's always nicer to come up and take the regulator out of your mouth and get some like fresh air.
Yeah.
Instead of tank air is always going to be tank air.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Damn, that sounds like it was quite an excursion. Do you frequently do like underwater modeling trips?
Not really. I feel that because my breath hold is only like 1 minute to like a minute and a half, I don't I don't feel like I can provide enough of like breath hold for a photographer, even though I've been told so many times, oh, you just have to be able to hold your breath longer than the photographer. I'm also super floaty, so I get frustrated that I can't like stay down. I'm always having to like push myself down and that, I think that's why I prefer the scuba air because I
Yeah.
can wear a weight belt and then not have to worry about trying to hold myself down.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it is hard underwater modeling. I would have guessed that you would be a sinker because you seem like you have very dense muscle, but you're a floater.
Yeah, I lots of people are surprised by that. Even my when I was taking my dive master course, my instructors were like, "No, no, no, you don't need that much weight." Like, yes, I do. I do need this much weight.
That's interesting. Wow. Where are you going to be traveling in the near future? Where can photographers find you?
So I will be leaving Mexico on the 20th, and I'll be going through Florida on a quick mini tour. And then I go to the US Virgin Islands for a week. And then I hop into Vegas for 2 days. I hop into LA for 2 days. And then I'm over in Hawaii for 10 days. And then I go over to Australia for 3 weeks and a bit and then back
Nice.
to Hawaii, and then yeah, lots of places.
That's amazing. I'm happy that you're going to Australia. I have not been there in years, but I've always enjoyed being out there.
Yeah, it's I really like it out there, and one of my friends from college lives out there now, so it'll be really nice to see her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So are you still doing those like multi-model, multi-photographer events?
Yeah, this year I have one in Hawaii end of April, and then one in Costa Rica in May. And Dane Halo and I are co-hosting together for Iceland in June.
Oh
And
man, that's
then
awesome.
I am trying to put together one in Portugal for October, just working out the details.
Ooh, that's so cool. I've never been to Portugal. Portugal, what's it like out there?
I think it's really beautiful. I like the food there. The climate there is really nice. It's not an expensive European city, so that's also nice on the wallet. And I've met some really cool people out there. So I'm really hoping that it can come together to happen this year.
Cool. Wow, that sounds amazing.
Hmm.
So, can you let me know what was the initial like motivation for putting the groups together? Because I've talked to a lot of different models who have been starting up like shoot events, and it seems that starting last year in 2023, that shoot events with that were hosted by models instead of just by like some guy or like by a male photographer really started coming on the rise. And now there's a lot of these shoot events that are run by freelance models that are kind of sort of in competition with each other. And I know that you've been doing them for quite some time, like
Hmm.
since you've been doing these since 20, was it
20,
since 2020?
2018.
2018. Yeah, you've been doing them for quite a while. Like, what was your initial reason for wanting to put on the groups?
So the initial reason was to be able to have a backup plan for when I retired. And I also really enjoyed traveling, and I was kind of doing them privately before people would ask me like, "Oh, you have you been to like this place and do you know any cool places to shoot or could you like take me to these cool places for a couple days and we could shoot there?" And then I also had done a couple events where I didn't feel like they were done well or they weren't like really valuing the models that they had. And in some of them weren't really, I wouldn't recommend them to amateurs. I didn't think that they were very safe options.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted to be able to offer a safe place for models and photographers to come together and like create together and get to know each other because we're always in passing and talking on the internet, but we don't often have time to sit down and have dinner together.
Yeah.
So I wanted people to be able to have dinner together and talk about their ideas and kind of build community because I was kind of missing a community. And also, I wanted to be able to have a safe place to invite amateur models to so they could see how professionals work and work with professionals and kind of learn from each other as they were modeling with professional photographers and for professional models, and the same for amateur photographers to be able to come and see how to work with professional models and see how professional photographers work with other models and how they do their editing, and everyone can kind of talk and collaborate together. And I just wanted it to be a safe learning place and creative space.
That's awesome. I love that. That sounds really nice and peaceful. And like it is your way of having some kind of a social life while being a full-time traveling person.
Exactly. Have my own little community.
Yeah. And I remember Dane was on the trip in Hawaii that I participated in. Was that a couple years ago? That was so much. Wait, that was
That was
last year.
last, yeah, last year.
Was about a year ago. And my concept of time is so skewed. I'm like, oh yeah,
Oh, mine is.
I recently had just shaved my head, so that's how I know what time of my life it was. But
Yeah, yep.
did she do all of your events?
No, she doesn't. We're just good friends, and I like to have her along when I can. She also is very talented with the media side of things that I really enjoy having someone along. She offers a lot of support when she joins as well. So she was driving for the trip that you were on, and for Iceland, she's doing all of the like media and advertising, which is very helpful because having to do everything is too much.
Yeah, I can feel that.
Yeah, and having a friend along is really nice because I feel like I'm have someone that's got my back.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to take a short little break to tell you about Model Society. ModelSociety.com is a website dedicated to featuring figurative fine art photography for models and photographers. What makes them different than other portfolio hosting websites is that some of those other websites will still host kind of tacky photography or exploitative photos. Model Society screens all of their contributors for quality and authenticity. So you only get the best of the best on there. If you're not a photographer or model, you can still enjoy and appreciate Model Society because they also have newsletters and magazines featuring their best work and new articles each week. Check it out, modelsociety.com. I will also include a link to Model Society in the show notes. All right, now back to our show. I want to ask you another question that I also ask everybody on the show. I call
Hmm.
it the rising phoenix era of your life. Can you describe a situation where you were faced with some kind of a challenge that you had to overcome? And it could be related to your modeling or not if you don't want to. It could be a career change, overcoming a fear. What is your rising phoenix moment?
So I am a Capricorn, which most people think is very like organized and meticulous and like that kind of person. And I used to be very much like that. I used to be very much like I knew every week what I was having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I would buy my groceries accordingly. And like you're having yogurt and granola this morning, and that lunch you're gonna have a peanut butter jelly sandwich that evening, you're going to have a Greek salad with the lemon chicken. And I would make sure I bought the ingredients for every single dish. And if someone came over and used my ingredients, well, now I have to go buy a lemon because I don't have lemon to make my chicken. So traveling before I became a full-time or even traveling model at all, I also did the same thing with my vacations. I would plan out every single day and every single activity I would do on my vacation, and it would be planned out on a calendar to the T. So when I started traveling full time, as people that travel and nothing ever really goes as planned. So it took some time for me to be able to just let go. And now that I have just let go and kind of more go with the flow, and I don't let things like the tour is 2 hours late and now my whole rest of the day is ruined because I'm not going to make it to dinner at 6 o'clock, is it makes life so much less stressful. And I think it made me be able to grow as a person too, to be able to be more open-minded and more flexible in my thinking and my way of life, and understanding different people's way of seeing things. So I think that was probably the one of the biggest flips in my life that I think was positive, and it allowed me to be able to be more successful in this career because I wasn't so stuck on things having to be exactly the way that they were planned out 3 months ago.
Yeah, that is like ridiculously relatable for me, actually, in particular. And for me, I sort of equated it to like a relationship that I was in. And then once I exited it, I still had that. I called it that I was a time junkie, where I was like just obsessed with time and like making it happen on time, like whatever. And like being 5 minutes late to something would really irk me. So I super relate to that. And I needed to get out of that though in order to become more comfortable just functioning in my next relationship, which is the relationship that I'm in now. Because you can't have anything spontaneous at all if you've pre-planned everything 3 months in advance.
Exactly. Yeah. I think trying to like force your life to be the way you planned it out also makes it very difficult to grow as a human and to be able to exist in a world that's constantly changing if you're not able to have the fluidity to change as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it does feel nice to have a plan. But I
Hmm.
think what you said, like letting go, like if something comes up that messes the plan up, it's like, okay, it's not the end of the world. This other thing could be just fine. Like, so
Yeah.
being
So
able to
instead,
go with the flow is important.
definitely. And instead of having a bad day or a bad week because someone was an hour late that or something got canceled, you could just still enjoy the rest of your day, just move on from it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could still find that very challenging to deal with, but
Yeah, yeah, me too. But it's easier to let it go now than it was like 10 years ago.
true that. That's very, yeah. Yeah. Do you think that any sort of like other like part of your life kind of was holding you to that like stringent pattern, or do you think it was just, maturing with age or
I think it probably had multiple factors. I think a lot of it was how I was raised. I think a lot of it was my personality and immaturity at the time. I also, the job that I was in before I switched over to modeling, I was a full-time medical esthetician. So all of my clientele were booked 3, 4, 5 months in advance. So
yeah.
I had to plan very far in advance and I had to stick to a very rigid schedule. But once I left that career and switched over and became full-time model, I was able to be more fluid and flexible, and it allowed me to be more creative again, which was very nice.
That's great. It's like when I'm thinking about being a traveling freelance model, there is a lot of room for like creativity, but also, like, because we have to lay out our plans months in advance, like, especially if you're putting on events, like, okay, I'm going to be in Iceland in June and I'm going to be in this other country in May. Like, you have to kind of figure out where you're going to stay and then lay it all out. And there's not a whole lot of wiggle room. Like, some people are like, oh, you're going to be in Denver and then you're going to be in this city the following month. Do you want to just stop by and like have coffee at this town like in the middle? And I'm like, well, actually, it doesn't really work with my traveling itinerary, because people have often asked me if I could like make a diversion from my plan to accommodate like something for them. And it is sometimes possible, but I have found that it can be really tricky to modify my plans unless something, act of God, like there's a hurricane or like something is like forcing the plan to change. It's like you still have like this, airplanes to get on at a certain time and day, and then it is somewhat flexible, but perhaps not as flexible as I would want it to be.
Yeah, I've been finding I've had to start being more flexible in the past couple years after COVID though, because I've found a lot more people are they're not booking that like 3 months in advance anymore. There's like, oh, well, I don't know my schedule until like next month, or like contact me again closer to the date that you're coming here, or people's plans are changing a lot more last minute now. So I get a lot of last minute cancellations, which kind of mess up my schedule. So then I have to scramble to try to like arrange a different city or change the dates slightly so that I'm not sitting for 5 days with no work somewhere that I'm paying for an expensive accommodation or
Yeah.
so all my flights now I book so that they can be changed last minute, and I don't book accommodations until like 2 weeks before so that I know, because my cancellation policy is at 2 weeks. So I know that, well, okay, now these people, if they cancel, they still have to pay the full fee. So I'm not losing money if someone cancels on me, and I can still afford to be there. And yeah, so there's a lot more factors that are making it a little more stressful, but also having to be more flexible for those
Yeah.
situations to be able to try to fill in gaps or arrange something else.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And wow, having that 2-week cancellation policy probably does really help out with that.
Yeah, although it's not always, it's rarely possible to fill those gaps in 2 weeks, but
Right, especially
sometimes
if
you
it's
can.
like some destination event or something.
Exactly.
But one thing that the pandemic did that was good that you mentioned is that flights have, like airlines have a lot more flexibility in changing flights without necessarily having a flight change fee. Like, I've been able to just cancel a flight and get the entire thing refunded if I needed to since the
I know.
pandemic. And before I could never, like,
Yeah, that's helped so much. I've wasted a lot of money on flights that I have had to still take and go and sit in a city with no work, or have to cancel and change to something else. Or so now that the airlines are being more flexible with that is very appreciated.
yeah. Wow, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why they didn't already have that policy before. Like, you know,
I know.
like back, kind of sort of like cell phone plans. Like, we used to have limited numbers of minutes for being able to talk on the phone. Like, what the
I
heck?
know. I remember counting those and like counting how many texts you sent that day to see if you like went over your texting allotment or what.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
just policies change. They're like, oh, yeah, this thing that you're like being, charged for, like, we could just not charge you for that. And it wouldn't really
Hmm.
change our life very much. Oh, man. So if you, and this is just kind of a random question, you may or may not have thought about it. If you had to have a part-time job for a couple of months somewhere, like you mentioned before, where in the world would you want to be?
I think I would, because I'm so used to the nomadic lifestyle now, I get pretty antsy being in one spot for too long. So I think every year I would probably change the location that I decided to spend that amount of time in. But I think because I haven't been a dive instructor for a while now, my license has lapsed, so I would have to renew it again. But my plan is to renew my license to teach, and then I can do that for 3 months in the winter somewhere. And I find that kind of job is more flexible they're more likely to be able to sign you for 3 months, and then you can fill the contract and then move on somewhere else for a couple months. You don't have to lock in for 2 years.
That sounds cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, just like being a traveling model and then considering having some kind of an other career seems like why would I want to do anything else, you know? And I run into this question for myself as well. Like why would I want to have any other kind of job that requires me to be at a certain place and time where I could be anywhere in the world and do bookings for like creative shoots? Like how could anything ever compare to that, like, or compete with it, you know?
exactly. And I don't know if I could go back to a job that I would have to commit to for a year and have to show up at 9 to 5 for 5 days a week and get 2 days off and have to schedule vacations to go and do something, and then you have to book off your vacation time and hope that it's accepted, and it's like that kind of
Yeah.
freaks me out. I don't want to go back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that too. And I mean, I'm 36. Like I know that people are probably still going to want to work with me for a really long time, but like is my body going to be able to like do a bunch of this like modeling stuff? Like I'll probably have to at some point just like take but modeling takes a toll on the body, especially if you're outdoors, like bending
Oh,
around
it
on rocks and
totally
stuff.
does. Yep. Just
But
turning
it
my head the other day, I kinked my neck. And I'm like,
oh my
what
god.
happening to my body?
Yeah.
Look
There's
to the right too
definitely
fast, and now I can't move my neck.
there's definitely some times where I'm like holding a pose where I'm like, okay, when I was 24, like this was fine. And now I'm like, okay, I'm feeling some kind of a strain that I haven't felt before.
Exactly.
Yeah. But another part of me wants to just defy all norms and be like, well, I can hang from a tree branch, and like do a bunch of poses, when I'm 60, like I'll be the only one doing it.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I totally feel that same exact way, but now I've had a couple times where I've slipped or like fallen, and instead of taking like an hour or so to get over it, my body takes a day or two now to recover from that.
Yeah. 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 But you know what? I'm sure that whatever like career path, I know that things need to be planned for, which is why I think it's good that you already like have your event coordination that you're doing. That like right now it's like, you're not totally relying on that for income because you're already doing a bunch of independent photo shoots still. But it's good
Hmm.
to build skills towards the future.
Yeah, definitely.
It is motivating to think about. I feel like I'm like somewhat organized. Like you were mentioning how like you're Capricorn and you're very like stringent in like your methods of like planning ahead and stuff. But my for me, I kind of do that too. But my planning ahead is just like the 3 months. I've got all this next 3 months, maybe 6 months planned out. But when I'm watching like motivational content, they're always saying, "Come up with a 5-year plan. Where do you want to be in 5 years?" I'm like, I don't know where I want to be in 5 years. Do
Yeah.
you?
No, and as I get older, I realize that the person that I was when I was like 18 years old is so far from the person that when I was 18, I thought that I was going to be now. Like and all my ideas change, your values change, when you experience something else, you get a different perspective, and maybe that could change how you think about something else now. And the world, it changes so much so quickly that I don't actually even know if a 5 or 10 year plan is very reasonable anymore, because the world is changing so fast, and if
Right.
you're moving around so quickly, your perspective also changes.
That's true. I read something, I forget which book it was, but it said something like even if you don't end up doing like the exact plan that you had like hoped for, it is still good to have some kind of a plan because at least you're aimed at something.
Yeah, I agree with that. It gives you like a goal to work towards. And if that plan doesn't come to fruition, I think it's just like you would just have to be able to let go if something's not going to work or be okay with something not working and
Right.
be able to be like, oh, that's fine. Like, well, we'll do plan B instead, or we'll think of something else and reevaluate in a year or two.
Yeah, because opportunities happen when you are working towards something. You make a connection, it leads you down a bunny trail, and then that bunny
Mhm.
trail might be the next big thing that you never would have guessed would have been the thing that you thought the 5-year plan was going to go.
Exactly. It can change and evolve, and I think people can like having a goal is great, but you have to also be able to evolve your plan and reevaluate and not have like a rigid, I have to do A, B, C, D, and that's how it has to be.
Yeah. Kind of going back to what we were talking about before where like the photographers that are hiring us are a lot of them are of like an older generation, like the type of people who prefer to have like conversations with you while you're doing a photo shoot, and like as that older generation dies off, then the entire landscape of like creativity in general and freelance modeling especially, it is going to be different. Like we are going to have to evolve as a whole, I suppose.
Yeah, I think so. But
But I guess I can't stress about it right now because that stressing about it is
no,
not
stressing
helpful.
about it doesn't make anything different. It just causes you anxiety while you're moving forward in life.
Yeah, because if it's not for the like nude photo shoot, in nature, like perhaps just being a therapist or like being a naked therapist, and I think about that for myself often. I'm like, what other skills am I providing besides just modeling while I am modeling? Some of it is kind of like you are like being a friend to the person that you're working with because you're talking about life stuff.
1,000%. And I've actually done like nude like sit sessions I was calling them where I just sit nude and just talk to someone that needs to talk to because lots of people are like they live alone now or maybe their like partner passed away and they just they just want someone to hang out with and talk to and I can do that over Zoom and just sit there and chat to someone and they can tell me about their problems and they just want someone to listen to them.
Wow, I feel like this is like an untapped market that like could use a lot more people doing it.
Yeah, and I don't mind. Like I enjoy it. I'm a fairly good listener and I like being able to offer some like kindness to someone that may be feeling a little bit lonely or upset. And I think it's a way to kind of do good in the world.
Awesome. Yeah, true. Very true. And there have been times where like after a shoot, I end up caught up in conversation, and I'm either still like in my like, thong or like just in a towel or whatever, and, like just chatting about stuff that's been going on with the photographer, and a lot of people like, you feel like you make a connection with somebody, and like unless you really have to like go to the next shoot, like sometimes it's nice to just have another 10-minute conversation.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, especially if you guys are vibing or having a conversation that's productive. I think it's great.
Yeah. It's so interesting. It's that like a lot of people view like freelance modeling as something where you have to be like extra professional because we were already looked at as like on the fringe of being professional just because a lot of our photo shoots involve nudity, which some people frown upon. But like I
Hmm.
feel like in any industry, like being personable is just as important as being reliable.
Exactly. And like I do have a very like laid out specific contract that I send to people that I work with. And for me, it covers my bases and it also sets up expected behavior so I don't have to run into as many issues of being like touched or
Yeah.
you know the drill. So
Yeah.
I think it just kind of helps lay out how I expect behaviors to be and a lot of people find it, but they don't like it because they don't want the rules attached. But I am also a professional and I deserve to be treated like a professional and treated respectfully. And I think it's also a huge safety thing for us as well. So I do have a very like strict contract. Not strict, it's obviously things are flexible, but there are specific things like don't touch me. That's pretty strict.
Yeah.
But yeah, also being able to be personable and talk them through it and just let people know that it's just for our safety and for their safety. It also lays out that I will show up when I say I'm going to show up.
Yep. I mean, everybody wants that, right?
Yeah,
I think it's good to express what is expected for the professionalism. So, and you mentioned that some people don't like it. They don't like the fact that you have a contract, or they don't like what is said in the contract.
they they don't like that I have a contract because they think it makes it less fun and too serious. I've heard that's something that I've heard quite often. But I mean, like the stuff in the contract, if you're not willing to agree on my rate, or you're not willing to agree on a deposit, or you're not willing to agree on the cancellation notice, then like
Yeah.
that can financially, it can be very financially detrimental to me. So I need these things to be able to survive as an artist and to be able to feed myself and have somewhere to sleep so I'm not sleeping on the street.
Yes.
Um,
Okay. That's
and if
all very
those things
important.
can't be respected, then maybe I don't want to work with that person anyways.
Yeah. They just don't want to read something for 5 minutes, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're having that same conversation over email or over Instagram Messenger that's going to be lining out all that stuff anyway.
Exactly. And having it in a written contract so everyone gets exactly the same information just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Well, Marie, we've had such a great conversation. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up, or anything in particular that you wanted to promote before we end the show?
I don't think so. Definitely keep an eye on my socials, and if anyone is interested in the retreats, contact me because they're going to be lots of fun. But yeah, other than that, I think we had a great conversation and covered a lot of bases.
Cool. Yeah, it's been so great getting to know more about you, learning about your dance history and how you had the knee injuries, but you're still able to be creative with your body through modeling. I did not know that you started out as a sketch model, and then that progressed into photographic modeling, which I do find very fascinating because it happens to be the backstory of a lot of people that I've interviewed. That the college classes where you get sketched nude seems to be like the first thing that leads you into all of this like traveling modeling stuff. So that's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, evolves from the art world.
Heck yeah. All right, Marie. Well, with that, I'm going to say goodbye. I will leave links to your socials and everything in the show notes, and I'll talk to you soon.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm glad we finally got this together.
Yeah, me too.
Bye.
Bye bye now. Are your parents or friends giving you the side eye for your risque modeling photos online? Wish you could explain the fantastic community of freelance modeling so they stop pressuring you to get signed to some scummy body shaming agency? That's why I made a documentary about us. Share the link, bringsomethingsexy.com, to anyone who questions the validity of your career path. It explains how models stay safe by checking references on photographers, exposes my confession with my parents on my nude modeling, tons of interviews with other professional freelance models, and lots of behind the scenes footage of all kinds of different photo shoots. It's just $5 to watch. Find Bring Something Sexy at bringsomethingsexy.com. Peace.